soon as the previous match is completed and the court is clear, the R1 and R2 immediately call for the captains to meet in front of the scorer's table. The R1 and R2 face the court. The R1 asks the captains to introduce themselves. The R1 introduces himself, introduces the R2. The R1 then identifies court markings and goes over any ground rules particular to the playing area. The R1 reminds the captains of the warm-up protocol in place for the tournament. If no protocol has been determined, ask the captains if they want to share the court or use a consecutive separate warm-up, also known as a split warm-up. Mention should be made that matches are best 2 of 3 or best 3 of 5 sets. Remind the captains to tell their teammates to remove all forbidden objects, usually jewelry, especially if it's the first match of the day. Tape over earrings is not allowed, but there are a few exceptions to jewelry. A flat band is allowed, also a religious or medical medallion removed from chains and taped or sewn to the inside of the jersey. If jewelry or some other forbidden object is detected in warm-ups, be proactive. Let the head coach know or let the captain know that a player is wearing a forbidden object. Players have worn headphones or earpieces listening to their musical devices during the warm-up. This is certainly not allowed. If jewelry is discovered during the match, assess a team delay. The R1 can remind the captains that subs approaching the subzone should enter the subzone one at a time and wait for authorization to enter the court. This can be mentioned when the R1 asks the R2 for input. The R1 asks the captains for questions. Now the R1 is ready for the coin toss. Unless it is already determined who calls the coin toss, do one toss. Assign one team as heads and the other team as tails. The R2 does the same for a deciding game. The R1 tosses the coin. If dropped, it should be tossed again, catches it, and does not turn it over. Show the result to both captains. The winner chooses serve, receive, or side. If a separate warm-up is used, the serving team has the court first. If a team chooses not to use its half of the warm-up, the court shall remain vacant. Both R1 and R2 put the coin in their pocket of the side that serves first. Not to complicate this, but the R1 could put the coin in the pocket of the receiver's side. When he is on the stand, the coin will now be on the server's side. Wish the captains good luck, and both R1 and R2 begin to time the warm-up. R2 immediately tells the scorekeeper who has the first serve. If time permits, both R1 and R2 approach each head coach together. Introduce yourselves. Identify who serves first. Go over ground rules. Ask for questions. Wish good luck. Overall, be cordial but brief. The R2 takes the lineup sheets to each head coach. If the coach is engaged in the warm-up, the R2 should leave the lineup sheet on the team bench. Meanwhile, the R1 briefs the line judges by using the acrostic SALT. S, server. A, antenna. L, lines. T, touch. Ask, are you going to line judge the entire match? All prospective line judges should be trained in advance of the tournament. While the R1 briefs the line judges, the R2 monitors the warm-up, checks players for forbidden objects, observes skill level of players, and at least 2 minutes before the start of the match collects the lineup sheets. If you haven't done so when you first arrived at the court, check there are only 3 people at the scorer's table: a scorekeeper, an assistant scorekeeper, and someone to either run the scoreboard or flip chart. Make sure it is free of any liquids or objects that may cause a problem if disrupted. R1 and R2 hold a pre-match conference to go over discrete signals. how the R2 will request a sanction, and anything else thought necessary. R1 and R2 checks each lineup sheet to make sure it indicates a captain. The signature or initials of the head coach. If no libero is listed as a courtesy, the R2 asks the head coach or captain if the team is using a libero for that set. The R2 should verify the score sheet and lineup sheet match. During the warm-up, identify the setters and look on the lineup sheet for the players opposite and who is before and after the setter. 2 is the setter, 5 is opposite, 9 is before, and 8 is after. So think 9, 2, 8. 7, 5, 4. If this is confusing, try to remember 2, 5 for the setter and who is opposite. Double digits can be more to remember, so another suggestion is to use features like hair color. Hair length. The setter has short blonde hair, and opposite her is a player with a ponytail. For other pre-match duties, I suggest a separation of duties for the R1 and R2. The R1 measures the net, places the antennas using the net chain as a plumb bob, checks for necessary padding, also for any sharp or exposed edges of the net, positions the referee's stand and checks for its proper height. The R2 measures the pressure of the ball, making sure there is 4.3 to 4.6 pounds, and marks it for identification just in case it might be mixed up with balls that are used in the warm-up.